Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Tony of Comic Conversations, the podcast that reviews more comics than anybody else. You can check out my podcast at halfguard.com. Today I'm covering all 6 parts of Thor Ragnarok. The following takes place between Thor 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, and 85. And these all take place during the Avengers Disassembled storyline. Specifically, Thor Disassembled. Alright, let's not waste any more time. Let's go into the first part of the story, Thor issue 80. We open up with the Norse legend of creation. Odin and his brothers slay the giant Ymir, giving life to the universe. His skull became the sky, his brain the clouds, his blood the seas, his hair the trees, and his bones the mountains. Odin breathed life into the maggots, making them the dwarves. Brock, Biru, and Eitri. It is these dwarves that were responsible for the making of a weapon so great. The mold was their burden to bear, as it was the sought-after prize of Loki, the trickster god. Odin needed a mighty weapon to strike down his enemies. The dwarves made the hammer Mjolnir, using the heart of his son to forge the mold to make the greatest weapon of all time. The hammer was forged of magic and Odin's power. No world capable of forging, the cosmos themselves would help create the weapon. Creating the mold and weapon nearly killed the dwarf and sent chunks of fire across the universe, killing many in the process. Only the death of a sun and a planet were strong enough to forge Mjolnir. With the hammer, Odin defeated many of his enemies, including the giant Lafli. Defeated, left his son Loki without a father. Odin took it upon himself to raise the child as his own. Odin favored his actual son over Loki and trusted him with Mjolnir. The jealousy would help forge Loki into what he is today, the bane of the gods. The dwarves seek to get rid of the mold. Word that it would fall into Loki's wicked hands, they attempted to throw it into the great void from whence the universe came. Even though the mold could not be used to make a Mjolnir because it did not possess Odin's blessings, it could be used to create numerous weapons that could rival Mjolnir's strength. In attempting to rid of the mold, the dwarves dropped the mold into a river. The mold, still very hot, was able to dry up the river upon contact. With Odin no longer among the living, Loki would make his move. A month later, the gods and dwarves would be shown paying tribute to the dwarves. Eitri and his brothers who had recently passed on. The gods would hear the rumbling of thunder. Is it from the grief of the dwarves? The rumbling will be from Surtur forging weapons from Mjolnir's mold. Thor goes to investigate the rumbling. He is immediately struck down, but from what? We see a great boat flying in the sky. It's Thor's many enemies, including his half-brother Loki, all wielding enchanted hammers. The blast also killed Imora the Enchantress. Thor comes too. Loki's 6 foes of the gods: Elik the Invincible, the war-driven troll; Fenris the wolf, demon spawn of Loki. The 3 clash hammers. The clash blow many gods away, including Lady Sif, who loses her arm in the blast. It's then that Loki sends Ymir the giant to join the battle. 4 hammers clash, making an even bigger explosion, destroying Mjolnir in the process. Loki with his hammer blasts Thor into the ocean, falling deeper and deeper into the ocean. Thor again awakens. He must avenge his fellow gods. He calls out to the Avengers for help. Cut to Captain America and Iron Man helping victims from a burning building. Thor appears before the Avengers, begging for their help. End of Chapter 1, Issue 80. Part 2, Issue 81, Thor. The 3 Avengers would make their way to Asgard, home of the gods. They are in a burned-down forest. With Thor's hammer damage, his travel via the hammer isn't quite what it once was. The Bifrost Bridge and Heimdall have been shattered. Asgard is in rubbles and nearly burnt to the ground. Clearly Loki's work. Thor tells Captain Iron Man that he and the gods are truly not immortal, and that one day they too will die. The Avengers come across an orphan. He tells them of the events. Loki appears and is thrilled with the opportunity to kill Thor again along with his friends. With his Avengers by him, Thor may stand a chance against Loki's forces. The 2 sides battle back and forth, even with Loki eventually joining the fray. The 3 Avengers are too much for Loki and his army. The Avengers have won the battle but not yet the war. Among the dead are Balder. A funeral is held for the fallen gods. Loki's horde of trolls, the giant, Elik, and Furnace all had hammers similar to Thor's, made quick work of the gods. Thor thanks Steve and Tony for their assistance, but they can no longer help him. It's their responsibility to make sure nothing happens to Earth. Thor wishes them goodbye. Thor speaks to his people, saying they survived many a battle, including the one that just occurred. They thought Odin's death would begin Ragnarok, but it's clearly the death of Balder that would hearken it. Thor encourages them. March now to the doom of dooms, to the end of all things and the reckoning of their enemies. They fight for the honor of a warrior's death and glory to Asgard. End of Chapter 2, Issue 81. Book 3, Thor 82. Alfheim, home of the Light Elves, 2 months ago. We see 2 Light Elves practicing their archery. The Warriors 3 show up with a fallen lady Sif in their arms. They ask for help. They say Ymir Kurl has fallen. It's then that Nagflar, the ship made of nails of the dead, shows up, flying in the sky. Clouds of arrows fall upon them. Cut to present day, and Alfheim is a frozen wasteland. Thor finds a sickly, skinny Volstagg. He's relieved that Thor had survived. Thor asks what of the others that escaped. He tells them that Loki's arrow had made quick work of them. Volstagg apologizes to Thor for being the only one left. Thor refuses to accept his apology. If he truly is sorry for their passings, he will get on his feet and help Thor in his crusades against Loki's forces. Thor would defeat Gerador, king of the trolls. He awarded Volstagg the Troll King's hammer. Thor and his forces would go from land to land and add to their ranks from the surviving warriors. Among the survivors would be the orphan that Thor had found. He had taken him as his own. Volstagg tells Thor he never thought he'd see the day when Thor would act as a father, and Thor replies he thought he'd never see a skinny Volstagg. Thor misses all of his friends and family, and the orphan asks, even Loki? He says yes, he can't understand what happened to his brother. It's then they are met by Fairness. He's grown in size and strength since their last battle. Vanaheim is under attack and is falling, yells Volstagg. Valkyrie, defender of Earth, returns to her home to fight beside her people, but she too falls in battle. Sif goes to tend to her. As Thor punches Fairness, he is shocked to discover that Sif is still alive. She tells Thor that word of his return is the only thing that kept them going. It's then that Thor realizes with the broken hammer that he leaned on Mjolnir's power too often, and that without it he is still the god of thunder and lord of Asgard. Seeing family and friends die alike, Thor realizes he's able to tap into a power source that even he didn't realize he had. As a battle-weakened Thor begins to fight Vaernus, Vaernus is struck down by an aiding Beta Ray Bill. End of Chapter 3, Issue 42. Book 4, Issue 83. With Vaernus defeated, Bill threatens the rest of Loki's horde. They run in fear of Bill's Stormbreaker. Bill asks what of Odin. Thor tells him he's dead. Along with his mother and Balder, Thor fears this may be the last of their days. Bill has been busy tending to his own people. He is sorry for Thor's loss. Thor tells Bill of his plan to fight Loki's forces. Bill offers to help fight, but Thor insists Bill watch over Asgard as well as the remaining citizens. Thor brings up the lessons he learned during his time as a mortal. He starts to feel distant from his fellow god. Among the dead are Valkyrie and the orphan boy that Thor sought to raise as his son. Thor would travel to Hildenstaff, where all things are seen. Thor mourns his fallen mother and brothers. He wonders why Loki has done all this. Did they not play under the same sun, raised by the same mother? Thor continues to mourn. He adds his fathers to those lost. Should Thor even bother fighting, he wonders? Should he embrace his doom or should he fight? It's then that Thor is visited by a spirit. The spirit has taken the shape of the fallen orphan. The spirit tells him to see with his heart, not his eyes. The spirit is the Odin Force. Thor had once had the Odin Force, but it left him. Thor comes seeking its wisdom, but asks why it left him. The spirit tells him he was not yet ready. To become a god, Thor must walk the path of the Allfather. Thor tells the spirit he is already a god. The Odin power gods are not born, they are made. Odin breathed life into creation, but that did not make him a god. Knowing and sacrifice is how he became noble. Thor does not seek to become Allfather. To answer Thor's answers, he must become more than the Allfather. The spirit asks him will he fight or embrace his doom. To become a god, Thor like his father must rely on rituals through making. Thor like his father must rely on rituals through making, not happenstance or birthright. Thor blames the dwarves for not stopping Loki from attaining the mold. The spirit tells him, this is the way of all things. The gods were born to die. All things in this world lead to death, as that is how life began. See, from the death of Ymir, the life of man began. Thor goes to the well of Mimir. The well is dry with Mimir long dead. The spirit tells him that the well was also dry for his father. The well does not give wisdom. The wisdom comes from ritual and sacrifice. Hoping to repeat Odin's success, Thor plucks out his eye. The well is still dry. The spirit tells him he has sacrificed nothing. Odin has already made that sacrifice. It's then that Thor gouges out his other eye and sacrifices it to the well. Now blind, the well overflows with water. Thor drinks of the well's water. He can now see the wisdom of the past. Ymir, the cosmic giant, was the first being. With his death, the world, man, and the golden gods were created. Ragnarok is simply part of a never-ending cycle of death and creation. Odin has died and has been reborn many times over. Thor too remembers all the times he has died, all the Ragnaroks. For Thor to complete his task, he must die again to be reborn. End of Book 4, Issue 83. Book 5, Issue 83. Thor and the Odin force walk to the ruins and surpass it for the knowledge he desperately needs. It was there that Odin hung himself for 9 days, getting close to death. It was how he gained his wisdom. Thor too must push himself near death. Only problem, if he fails, there's no coming back. Thor hangs himself, hoping the knowledge of the ruins would reveal themselves. The act brings an unprecedented amount of closeness with his father. Between the hanging and the well, the knowledge gives Thor the power to know the past, control the present, and guide the future. See through the veil of time, past the knowing of the gods. It's then he draws upon his human knowledge from his time as Donald Blake. The science of man. He sees beyond quantum structure, beyond cosmic architectures. The relationship between man and God, child and father, creator and destroyer. Only after destruction can resurrection occur. Thor knows what he must do but refuses. He now knows why his father sent him to Earth as human, to break the cycle of Ragnarok. He sees the end of all things and the part he must play in it. Thor refuses. The Odin force tells him then he shall die. Death comes for us all and gives us wings. Thor is transported to Hel, land of the sick, weak, and doomed. Hela, queen of the dead, comes to claim Thor's life. Thor cries out to his father. Odin saves him and carries him out of Hel. It's then that Thor meets those who sit above in shadow. Thor tells them he knows of their game. They feed on them. Odin making Thor human was always part of his plan for the ending of the cycle. Thor returns to the ruins, but now with the Odin force. He knows those who sit above in shadow's game. They feed on the gods. Valhalla has been rebuilt in Loki's image. Thor confronts Loki. Loki is impressed that Thor knows of the magic of the ruins. Loki wishes not to destroy Asgard, but to rule it. Thor threatens to stop Loki, but with a snap of his fingers, the stone statue above his kingdom are awoken and proceed to attack Thor. With his newfound magic, Thor summons a giant flying serpent. Loki's forces are no match for the Odin force. Thor tells Loki only after you've lost everything can you do anything. Thor threatens to punish Loki for all the lives of the many brave men he's taken. He threatens to make him less than a man. Thor uses the Odin force to remove Loki's head from his shoulders. Thor will take Loki with him to the end of the journey. Even the spirit not knows what comes next. The experience he has as a human being is proving to make all the difference. The cycle of death and renewal gave life to those who sit in shadow. They suck life from the gods. Thor states how the cycle must end. Thor asks how can there be a final battle if they continue to be reborn. Thor promises to bring an end to the gods. Thor will bring death and bring about Ragnarok. End of Book 5, Issue 84. Book 6, Issue 85. Thor confronts Surtur. As Surtur's ready for battle, Thor tells him there will be no fighting today. Thor simply asks Surtur for restitution. Loki calls Thor a fool. Surtur killed Odin. Get your revenge, he says. Thor said he'd throw Loki's head into a volcano if he didn't think his cold soul would freeze it over. Thor simply wants Surtur to reforge his hammer. Surtur says if he restores Mjolnir, Thor would just use it to strike him down. Thor offers to give Surtur the hammer once it's complete. He has Thor's word. He will also allow Surtur entrance to Valhalla and Vanaheim to lay waste to them. Even Loki is appalled. He simply wants to rule it, but Thor wants to destroy it. Thor promised Surtur a final battle, a final class that will not pale with repetition, a final battle to end all things. Surtur reforges Mjolnir, taking pride in the process. If ever it strikes him down, he will be pleased to take his death from it. Thor promises him no such honor. He will not die. Thor tells him to go to his land and give them a final day. Surtur is thrilled to lead his horde to Ragnarok. Bill, Sif, Volstagg, and the remaining gods fight Surtur's invading army in vain. As Sif and Volstagg fall, Bill is transported to space. Bill is to return to his people, return to watch over Earth and tell tales of their deeds. Bill does not like the agreement, but makes peace with it as it's Thor's final request. Fenris the tiger serpent arrives. He fulfills his destiny, swallowing all that remains. Thor goes to his final task, the Great Tapestry. For life to be complete, it must have an ending. The fates stop Thor from proceeding. They knew from day one that this day would come. Realizing there's nothing he can do to the front of the tapestry, he examines the back and notices a thread running along it. A thread running from the bottom, the end of time, and the top, the beginning of time. Time is not a single line but a circle. Thor seeks to break the thread. When he's stopped by those who sit above in shadow, they tell him he's won. He's beaten them at their game. They offer to let Thor join their ranks. Thor does not want to join them and simply wants to end their game. He snaps the thread, destroying the ruins and the Tree of Life. Those who sit above in shadow were Celestials who lived off the great enemies generated by the lives of the Norse god. With each cycle they would feed. Every Ragnarok gave them sustenance. Thor destroyed them and brought honor back to his people. Life consumes life. It is the way of the universe. Thor has set his people free. By refusing to take part of Ragnarok, he exposes those who sit above in Shadow's twisted system. Thor's knowledge of humanity gave him an understanding of self-determination and never backing down. The Asgardians knew only of inevitable death, trapped by a never-ending cycle. But with Thor's human knowledge, he knew there could be another way. The Norse gods had fought their final battle. All that remains of them are memories. Thanks again for checking out this video, and by all means, check out my podcast, Comic Conversations, the podcast that reviews more comics than anybody else at halfguard.com. As always, stay tuned to Comic Conversations on YouTube for new videos. Alright, and as always, check you guys out next time. Adios.